Hello, welcome again to another Excel at Excel. My name is Lloyd, and I am here again with Patrick Howard. Go ahead and say hi, Patrick.
Hey Lloyd, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful today. So today you have something else that you want to show us here. Would you mind giving us a little explanation of what we're going to be talking about here and what we got in store?
Sure. So some of the comments that I got from our last lesson was, hey, that's really great to see those functions. They're really simple, but how can I use them? I mean, what's the purpose? What's the real reason that you want to do that? So today I wanted to show you some real life examples of how you might use functions. I'll start off with showing you a tool that I created for a former employer of mine. And then I'm going to back off and show some very simple real world applications of using functions.
That sounds awesome. Oh wow, look at this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, so here's what I want to show you is how you can take this, and I whited out some of the information because it would be considered proprietary to that company, so I've whited out some of the information. But this is a spreadsheet, and I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but it goes all the way to column AK. So what is that? 37 columns, and it goes down, I don't know, 3,000 lines or so. Okay, and it's just all kinds of data like, there's the serial number, who the project manager is, who technicians are, what's the name of the project. I mean, just all kinds of data, a whole bunch of dates and quantities and whatnot. Okay, and I was able to take this spreadsheet and turn it into this. Okay, with just using functions. Well, and there were a few macros in there too, but basically just using functions, I turned this spreadsheet into this report and this report.
Super clean, super simple.
Right.
Everything there for you.
And the reason I did this is my manager was spending 3 hours a day doing these reports. By doing this spreadsheet and with all the functions and macros, I was able to reduce that time to 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay. So that is the power of functions. And
That's
I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of these, but I just wanted to show you just real basically how I got there. Yeah, so I just want to show you real quickly. Again, I'm not going to uh, get into a lot of the actual calculations, but so basically you have to uncover some of these spreadsheets that I've got hidden. Let's do all that.
okay.
So what I did, and here was the first macro I used. I started off with this data remember, and then I used a macro just to shave it down to this. And this is, I shaved off, I don't know how many columns, maybe 10 columns and, 1,000 rows, let's say. So I just kind of cut a little bit of the fat away from the meat. Then I use this spreadsheet to trim it a little bit further and to make sure all my data was standard. One of the things that happened was these dates were just all over the place. The format of the dates were just terrible. So I had to clean that up, make sure these dates were okay. So to do that, I use this. Yeah, I use this one here to do a lot of calculations. Okay, and actually this is my final calculation that went into this this report up here. So those calculations went into this report. But I used this sheet right here to do a whole bunch of calculations. Like, for instance, today, when you entered today's date, I went to the cover sheet and got that date. Then I converted all that to different information. And again, this gets a little complicated. I calculated how many days in the month, and to do that, I had to know if it's a leap year, what the month was. So you have a lot of VLOOKUP data, which we've not gotten into, but we will at some point in the future.
Okay.
So anyway, all of that stuff, all those calculations get you to that.
Uh, Calculating stuff like that is pretty crazy, which is it's amazing how you have a sheet there at the end then for using that in your VLOOKUP references. That's that's quite a bit of info there that you have to parse through.
Right, and it was, I had to do that just simply because, well, you can see maybe, well, it's kind of hard to tell, but these dates, okay, well, you see some of these dates are just blank, so I had to deal with that.
Hmm.
Some of these dates, that's a dummy date. Obviously, we didn't do any projects in 1900.
Right.
And this was done in 2013 or 2012, I think, or somewhere around there. And we obviously didn't have any projects in 2020. It would be a valid date today, but not so much back then. So I had to deal with all these anomalies, and I used functions to do that. And I'll just say they're extremely advanced functions and nested functions. And this whole thing took me probably about a month to do. Okay. So this is just an example of where you can be at some point. You're not going to be there next week if you're just starting, but this is what you can do with it.
Right.
So with that said, I want to show you just some real world examples of things that you could do today. Okay. So here are 3 examples. So this, basically I've created 3 real life scenarios where you might want to calculate something using functions. The first one here, this is, let's say you want to know how many days there are left until an event, which, by the way, that was one of my calculations in that last sheet. I used that extensively. And what I've shown here, you see date another way and yet another way. So I've just formatted this date 3 different ways. And we've started off, let's say you have actually, I'm going to take these dates out. Let's just take them out. Okay. So you notice how those changed. And I'm going to enter enter the date of the event as 12/31/2020. Okay. And what I've done with the formula is just I've said this equals that, and C5, this equals that. And then I just formatted them differently. So these are different ways you can display dates in Excel. So you can just see that. Now today's date, let's do the same thing. So today is what, 4/14/2020. Okay. See how I did the same thing? Mm-hmm. Now, if you just want that date to auto-populate anytime you open a spreadsheet, there's a much simpler way to do that. And all you have to do is do equal today, open close parentheses, and you have the date.
There you go. So from then on out, that cell will display the current date.
That's right. Now, at that point, it becomes a very simple calculation to know how many days are left. It's just this equals the date of the event minus today's date. Now, you'll notice that this is a date.
It is.
Well,
yeah.
Obviously, that doesn't tell us a whole lot. So let's change the formatting. So we're going to make that into a number. And now we have 261 days. Now we can take those zeros off like that. Mm-hmm. So it's 261 days until New Year's Eve. Very simple calculation.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's still too soon. That's still too soon.
Well, let's see. Let's do shopping days until Christmas, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
All right, you got 254 days left to buy those presents. Okay, so that, again, that's a pretty common thing you would want to do with the formula, and very simple. Just a simple that minus that. Mm-hmm. And then make sure this is formatted correctly.
Right. So the number that was shown too, it went from, because you had it set to a date format in the beginning.
Right.
But that number is actually a value derived from how many days until that other date. It showed up as 1900. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I noticed is the first date, and this was in your original spreadsheet too, you had a lot of 1900s. That shows up as the value of 1. So it's the first date that Excel will calculate as a value. So can it do, have you ever seen it do anything prior to 1900?
No, and that's a great question. And I'll try not to get too deep into why that happens. Okay. But let's just say it's how Microsoft calculates date. So basically, you noticed when we had the date in there, I can't remember the date, but it probably showed like 4/4/1900 or some similar date. Yeah. So basically, what it did was it it calculated, it's actually probably in June or July or August. Well, anyway, it calculates the number of days since January 1st, 1900. That's how, and in other words, it says, okay, this is how many days, is X number of days from January 1st, 1900, and this is X number of days from January 1st, 1900. That minus that number is this number.
Right. Yeah.
So what it was doing is just converting that number back into a date. So I could take the same thing, say, actually start with the number 254. Let's format that as a number. Oops. All right, so 254, that's a number. Mm-hmm. Now, when I go back, I hope it doesn't prove me wrong, but if I go back and change that to a date,
ta-da!
See, it just takes that number from January 1st, 1900 and adds that. So that'd be, what is that, September 10th, 1900.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting way that Excel calculates dates. It's using numerical values from a set date and time, and then it's displaying that. So even though we shorthand it, because you typed it out 12//24/2020, that then gets converted on its own to a set number X days from January 1st.
Correct. And so you could use any of these columns. I tell you, let's just take this formula out, and let's say equals that minus that.
Ta-da!
So it doesn't matter. It's just formatting it, just saying it a different way.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the next one here. This is a cost analysis of a shipment that you're getting. Let's say you just made this order and you're getting this shipment in. Okay. And I've just populated some unit costs here. Just at random. Well, not really random, but just pick some numbers out of the air, and then how many of those I might want. Now, if you want to know how many or how much 4 items that cost $12.50 is, all you have to do is just equals that times that, right? Mm-hmm. It says $50. Now, we could go through and type that same thing into each one of these cells, or there's a little simpler way to do it. If you notice, there's at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little square. Mm-hmm. If you just grab that square and drag it down, it does it for you. Now, let's say that you want just to add up all these prices here. I don't think it's a very meaningful number, but let's say you want to add all those up. Well, cost if the quantity was 1, again, equals sum, parentheses, and we learned that last week. Mm-hmm. So those all add up to $163.60. Now, here's a very useful piece of information. How many items are in your shipment? Yeah, that'd be kind of nice to know when you're receiving it. Whoops. Mm-hmm. So this equals, again, sum. Just drag that down. There's 281 items in there. And I might also like to know how much that whole shipment's going to cost me, right?
Oh, definitely.
So that's just equals, I'm sorry. I already did that calculation basically. It just equals this column right here. Let's say sum. So that's how much that shipment's going to cost me. And if I'd like to know how much each one of these items is going to cost on average, it's very simple. Just equals this total cost divided by the items in the shipment. So each item, the average cost of items is $10.30.
Mm-hmm. And that's all.
And something interesting here, I did not format any of these. Excel just, let's scoot that over so you can see it a little bit easier. Excel interpreted this as a dollar, and these are dollars, and this is just a number. I did not do any formatting.
Yeah, so on the cells there, they were just base general, which could be anything. So it was pulling it from your columns then, where you had already pre-formatted, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and just to show you the power of this, okay, well, let's say that's when I ordered it, but by the time they shipped it, this item right here, they've reduced it down to $12. Okay, so I'm going to change that and watch what happens to all the total cost and the average unit cost. See, and so I just changed all those numbers. So now the average unit cost is $10.02.
Brought it down a bit. Yeah. So that's powerful stuff with your the ability to use the sum function there to just gather that information together, and you also use that drop down option. Is that the fill, right? You're doing a fill of the same formula, just multiple rows.
Right. That's correct. Yeah. So just pulling it, and when your cursor gets over that X, you'll see how it changes. Well, you may not see it, but it changes to a plus.
Yeah.
And you just drag down, release, and it puts those formula, puts the correct formula. So what it's doing when you do that, you see how this is A4 times C4.
Mm-hmm.
It interprets A5 times C5 all the way down. Now, there may be times you don't want to say this number change. There's a way to do that, and we'll get into that when we get a little more advanced, I think. But
Yeah.
just for now, it just, every time you go down, it adds one to each of these.
So it's doing like a series increase by one, essentially. Like it's identifying that you want to go up for each line that you're going down.
Right.
So it increases
Well,
that. And that's a really useful tool because it means that you don't have to redo that formula, hundreds of
right.
times for a spreadsheet like what you may have been working with before. Your very first one that you showed us there. Or even
Right.
one like this where, you only have 9 entries here or so, but like if that kept going throughout the month, or you kept having to do that multiple times,
Sure.
it eats up time. So it's all about, like you said in the beginning, when you had your boss doing this thing for 3 hours and you took it to 2 minutes. It's all about reducing the amount of work that you have to do by utilizing Excel's capabilities and just understanding
Right.
what those are, so you can do that, so you can make yourself a little bit more productive and give yourself less of a headache. Because that's
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 right.
that's usually what I'm looking for is, oh man, this
Now,
is
I'm
too
all
much
about
stuff.
let's let the computers work for us instead of the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, one more I've got for you, and this is a little more complex, but this could be, let's say I'm a contractor and someone wants me to build a garden box in their backyard. I can use this, and actually I've whited out some of these this formula. So actually there's some formulas in here I've already put in,
Okay.
but I can use this to calculate my shopping list. Okay. So what I've done here to create this shopping list, first of all, I need to know how many, what my length is going to be, what my width is going to be, and what my height is going to be. And if I know I'm going to put support at every 18 inches, I have this number here, 1.5 in feet. And if I know I'm going to put 8 nails in every support, then I put that number here. And if I know my board size, I'm going to get 2 by 8s. Okay, I know the board height is 8 inches. Okay, so then I've come over here, and you see it says 72. And I've calculated that by saying B5 times 2, right? Because I got two lengths, and then plus B7 times 2, 2 widths. That gives me 72 linear feet. Okay, and I know that if I'm going to make this 2 feet high and my boards are 8 inches, I need to know how many of those boards I need, those 2 by 8s. So by doing that, I've taken F5, which is this one, 72, times B9, which is 2. Okay, so that gives me my number of feet. So I know now it's 2 feet tall. This is how many 216 boards divided by our times. This number here is 12 inches in a foot divided by this board size. And that'll tell me how many of those boards I need for this many linear feet, how many boards of 2 by 8s I'll need. Now let's say I ordered 2 by 12s. See how I changed the boards for height?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to 8 though. And then in the supports, I know I want to do them every 18 inches, which is 1.5 feet. Okay, so it's very simply this many linear feet, because it doesn't matter how many tall it is, times B11 which is the support distance. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives me 48. I've got the basic calculations here. So I need to go by this many 2x8s, which is this. So it's just simply this number equals this number.
Right.
Okay. And my 4x4s, I know I need this many of them.
Mm.
And nails, I need this number of supports, times the nails per support, which is 8. So I need 384 nails. That's my shopping list when I go to Lowe's.
My goodness, that's a big, well, that's a big project, so I guess that makes sense.
Now, okay, let's do something a little more reasonable.
Oh,
Let's say I'm going to build you one 4x8. Okay, looky
easy.
there. There's my shopping list now. Now it took me about, I don't know, 10 minutes to make this. But imagine if I use this every single day. All I had to do is put the length and the width in. If I want to make it 3 feet tall,
Yeah.
okay. Well, just update your shopping list. Imagine how much time that'll save.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, once you have something down, so you spend the original time, and this is true with most programming in general. Anything that you're doing to create and make something easier for yourself in the long run, you spend an initial amount of time, but in the long run, it will save you a lot more because now you don't have to do that for every single time that you want to do something similar. You just go back to that original form or spreadsheet or program that you created out. Now, every time that you want to make or you want to create another shopping list, you can change any of the variables, and,
Absolutely.
and it'll still give you the information that you need. And then from there, you could take your shopping list and go back to your pricing, your cost analysis. Okay, I need this many at this many item. The item is this many per unit. I need this many units. Here's my thing. It's going to tell me total. You can start using this data in other sheets and referencing it elsewhere. So, yeah, this is pretty good information here to have.
Well, and you could take that a step further even. And I won't take the time to get real fancy, but let's say if you wanted to estimate the project cost.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see here. Well, I'm not going to get real fancy with this, but let's see, the 2x8, you need that. And let's say I know they cost me, I don't know, $2.50.
Right.
That's $270. And let's say I know times 6. There we go. So $96. And I know that these are sold by the pound or something, but let's say each one of these nails is going to cost me 2 cents. So now I know how much my materials are going to cost. I can go change this. Say I want to use, let's say 2x6s. Okay, now I know how much my total cost will be. Let's just equal sum here. So within just moments, I know how much my materials will cost. I know how much time it's going to take me to build that from experience. So I can give an estimate right there on the spot within just minutes.
Easy stuff. Yeah, and this is a real. So another business person might be using this who's running a construction company or something like that, and or it's you planning out your own DIY project. There's plenty of ways that this can be useful at home as well.
Exactly. And that's all I've got today. I just wanted to show some real life examples of why a person might want to use Microsoft Excel functions.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. That was amazing. I mean, that stuff is going to be useful in a variety of places, and we're going to try and do another one here next week too, right?
Time willing, I think we can fit another one of these in.
Okay. So we will try. We're going to come back at you hopefully next week here with another one. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Loyd.
And I'm Patrick Howard.
And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on Excel with Excel. Have a good one.